Hi there, my name is Pisitemi, your host of Founders Connect. On this show, I tell the stories of African founders and operators who are building amazing businesses that are impacting millions of lives across the continent. On this episode, this very special episode, we're doing a deep dive into Norrsken. Norrsken is an impact ecosystem where entrepreneurs can come and find everything that they need to make saving the world their business, such an ambitious mission. I'm having a sit down with Niklas, who is the founder of Norrsken Foundation, the nonprofit, and also his co-founder at Norrsken22, the over $205 million fund that is investing in high growth companies across Africa. They built the Norrsken house in Kigali that launched last year, and they have amazing things. We're sitting together in Lagos today, and we're going to talk about, first of all, how they met each other, how Niklas built Klarna, why he left Klarna to pursue this mission, why they're in Lagos, their hope for the African continent, and also how every entrepreneur, how every founder who wants to plug into the ecosystem can actually do that. So if you want to learn all about what Norrsken is doing, if you want to learn about the co-founders, Hans and Niklas, then make sure you stay and watch this video to the end. Let's go. How would you describe yourself in 3 words?
In 3 words, I guess ambitious, I hope nice. I don't know if anyone else would describe me that way. And maybe someone that changes his opinion all the time.
Interesting.
Which can be good and can be bad, I guess.
That's very interesting. And what about your background or just how you've grown feeds into ambitious, being nice, you hope, and changing your opinion?
I think my father always told me that, Niklas, you can do whatever you want in life as long as you become a doctor. So that was kind of the bar to get his acceptance. So I always had this like performance-based self-consciousness. If I perform well and if I am ambitious, I felt extra love from my father, and that I think was a very important motivator for me growing up. So I think that plays into the first one at least.
Yeah. What about the other 2?
The other 2, nice, I guess. Well, my mother is a nurse, always take care of other people, never prioritize herself. Maybe I got 1% from that, perhaps. Always had an interest of the bigger picture. And if you look at the bigger picture, you realize that I've been super fortunate in life, being born in Sweden with free healthcare, free education. And also super lucky with the company I created, Klarna. And I think it's a strong correlation with money and happiness, but then it's a totally diminishing return curve. And then what do you do with the rest? And to me, it brings a lot of meaning with what I'm doing today. To the nice.
That's very nice. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Sweden.
Okay.
My father was a teacher, my mother was a nurse.
Oh.
Yeah, in a small town. So very middle class, a lot of love in the home, but we were not rich. We had food on the table. We went on vacation a couple of times. Never outside Sweden. First time I flew actually, I was like 19 years old, right? So that's how I grew up, and yeah.
How did you end up an investor then?
So I think the background was that I wanted to do more in life than. I love my parents, but I want to do more than just being a teacher and a nurse, which is great, right? But
well, not for you.
So I said I need to be an entrepreneur. So I had that from very early on.
Did you see any entrepreneurs that you wanted to model after, or you just knew that?
No, I just knew that I
wanted
to have my own company.
Yeah.
So after school, almost right away, I started my own company. I was 25 years old. I was running around to CEOs of public companies in Sweden and telling them that they should buy services from my great company. And they looked at me, 25 years old, you're a little bit too young for us to deal with. And then I actually got a family, well-known family in Sweden to back me financially. And they also joined me on the board. And suddenly I had that credibility behind me to make my business flourish. So I built that, became quite successful, and then sold it. The family wanted to sell it. I said fine, and I got some money in the bank. I was.
How much was that?
It was, for me at that time, it was a lot of money. Today, maybe a bit less.
You mentioned that your father said you can be anything that you want as long as you end up being a doctor. So I'm curious if you tried going through that path. Did you ever try it?
I did try, but I wasn't smart enough. I didn't get the grades that was required to become a doctor. That was one thing, and also the second thing was that I want to be financially independent, and you don't become that as a doctor in Sweden. So I decided to study business instead, and I did that for a couple of months before actually, by coincidence, starting Klarna.
So tell me a little bit about that. And I know after you finished, when you left Klarna was when you went into Norrsken. So you can talk about studying Klarna, leaving, and then we'll get into Norrsken.
Sure. So just a couple of months into business studies, my friend Sebastian came up with this idea behind Klarna. He had previously worked at a finance company, and in that company helping out selling debt collection services. And the companies he reached out to trying to sell this debt collection services, they told him that we're not interested in this, but if you want to take the full transaction cost, the full transaction risk in a transaction shopping online, then we're interested. And he kept thinking about this and got back to school, told me about the idea, and together with a third co-founder, Victor, and we said that let's give it a try. If we can enable people to shop online and pay after delivery, maybe that's a good business idea to try to pursue.
Turned out to be good.
Yeah, we're very lucky. So this was right when the Swedish e-commerce took off. So if we would have started this 2 years earlier, there would be no e-commerce, there would be no Klarna. So very lucky with the timing. So let's give it a shot. We had no money, no experience of fintech, and didn't know how to program a bank, basically, or a system to handle all the transactions. So first we went out to try to raise capital. This was in 2005. The terminology of business angel didn't exist in Sweden. So we bought the daily business magazine, Dagens Industri in Sweden, and then we tried to look up if we could find rich people, and then we tried to hunt them down with the phone. But obviously not successful. We got 20 no's. But then we were able to get into an incubator that the Stockholm School of Economics organized. And in that incubator, we got free internet, we had an office space, we were able to sit next to other founders, could share some mistakes and some successes. It was very important for us for now, our motivation. Building Klarna in the early days, we were sitting in that incubator, reached out to a few investors, we were able to secure the first investment. But it was one superstar investor in Sweden called Otterling. And I know they were a little bit unsure, did we dare to contact him or not? But we actually reached out to him, and he was willing to take a meeting. And we did our absolute best to pitch him Klarna, but he declined.
And I moved back to Sweden. One of the first guys I met was Niklas.
Oh, okay. So in 2005, it's a long time.
Yeah. And then they were raising money for their company. There was 3 guys in a very small room. They have oversized suits on, and they were sitting there saying, "Oh, we're gonna send out invoices to customers who buy online." And I said, maybe that's maybe mobile is more interesting. So I went and looked at mobile companies. I said no to one of my most stupid, investments.
Still regret it today?
Yeah, but stupid, right?
And this incubator organized this Christmas mingle with other investors, with business angels. And during that mingle, we were able to do a 3-minute pitch. And that turned out to a lady called Jane Valerud decided to invest $60,000 for 10% of Klarna. That was a great success. And we quickly realized with this capital that, okay, but what do we do now? Now we have the capital. How do we build the system? Do you go and buy it off the shelf, or how does it work? And of course, you cannot buy a fintech system off the shelf at the supermarket. So she introduced us to 5 developers that could program the system. So in exchange for them building the initial platform, they got 37% of the company. So before we even have started, half of the company we had given away. But I think without that, there would be no Klarna today. And this, I think, is one of my key takeaways, to be generous with the shares in order to get the right competence from the start. That is so crucial. And going back again, lucky with the timing, we were able to sign up e-commerce companies. They started to use our payment solutions, buy now, pay later. Started to grow internationally, expanded into Finland, Norway, Denmark, Germany, Netherlands. We almost went bankrupt in Germany. And then 7 years in, we were able to sell off our first secondary shares. And from one day to the next, I went from being heavily in debt into having $10 million on my bank account. And that was a lot of money. And I reached my financial target in life.
$10 million was your financial target. When that happened, was that when you started thinking about what the next thing would be? Or it took some more years before you said, okay, I think I don't want to do Klarna again. I want to do something else for the greater good?
Right. So what happened was that I've been looking forward to this day so much. My girlfriend broke up with me a couple of years later because she thought I worked too much and lost connections with friends. It was all Klarna 24/7. But now I'm gonna reach nirvana, right? With all of this money. Now I can be in heaven for the rest of my life. So actually 2 days after this money hit my bank account, I had a conference booked in San Francisco. We're gonna receive the Crunchy Award by TechCrunch. And I decided to stop by in Las Vegas on my way to San Francisco. No one could join, it was short notice, but I decided to go anyway. I went by business class for the first time. You know, you go to the left of the airplane instead of to the right, you get a glass of champagne. Checked into this big panorama suite with marble floor and was drinking wine I couldn't pronounce. And I mean, really living the dream life.
Sounds like the life.
Yeah, I changed my fake Rolex into a real Rolex and shopped like crazy. But then back to the hotel room again, I started to get this really bad feeling. It was a feeling of emptiness and meaninglessness. I started to look at that watch again. It showed the same time as my fake Rolex, right? I didn't look any different in that specific clothes. That big suite I was checked into, it was just empty and cold. And that wine I was drinking, it tasted exactly the same as my bag-in-box wine at home. It was just so apparent that, once again, I mean, strong correlation with money and happiness at a certain point of time. But then when we reached that high, crazy enough goal, I mean, it was just a myth, a complete myth. And I started to reflect on my life. I started to reflect on the company I created. I mean, a buy now, pay later solution, adding a quite expensive interest rate. Is that making the world a better place, really? And especially if you look at the Nordics, where we need 4 planets to sustain the average consumption of a Swede, which is clearly not sustainable. And what was my responsibility of this? Was it to maybe increase the consumption even more by enabling credit solutions? And all of this led me to break down in that hotel room. I had a life crisis, and that eventually led me to quit Klarna after 11 years to instead start the Norrsken Foundation.
Interesting. So it was that singular moment that kind of like changed the trajectory?
I think so.
How did you go from that moment to knowing how you wanted to do it and that this was exactly what you wanted to do?
No, I think I started to look into, I mean, what do we celebrate in society and what do we have as role models? And I remember in Sweden when we started Klarna, I had the goal to build a company like Price Runner, which was a rising star in Sweden back then. It was a company valued at $10 million. They showed what was possible. But then Niklas Adalberth sold his Skype for $2 billion to eBay and then later on Microsoft, and showing to the Swedish tech ecosystem that you can actually build a unicorn company out of the tiny city of Stockholm, 1 million people. So that was like a big aha movement for the entire industry, I think. And overnight we shifted the ambition level to actually build a very sizable company with Klarna. So the power of role models is so important. But then again, I mean, being then successful with Klarna and looking at my peers creating addictive computer games or mobile phone games that makes people lose attention span and so on. Is that really making the world a better place? So instead, what we want to do with the Norrsken Foundation is that we want to put the spotlight, network and capital behind entrepreneurs that are really tackling societal and planetarian issues. And if you look at in Stockholm, in the Nordics and Europe, where we have a lot of activities, we have a Norrsken house in which we host 450 entrepreneurs that tackle planetary boundaries. We have 5 different funds that can invest into these kind of entrepreneurs that are tackling these global problems. But then if you look into what we're doing for Africa, I think, I mean, it's no, to me at least, I cannot find anything more meaningful than invest into the next generation of unicorns coming out of Africa. Because I think they really help out with socioeconomic growth. I think they provide a lot of job opportunities. And I think that with these solutions, you're not only leapfrogging old industries, but I clearly already now can see how these companies are actually contributing to tackling these bigger issues as well, which I think is very, very interesting and very promising.
Okay, so suddenly you have a bank account which is more than you need, and you feel like, wow, was that it? Right? It kind of feels quite empty. So quite quickly I started in another company, which became much bigger than my first company. We became an international company. I had international investors, and I did a lot of fundraising. I learned a lot about how the VC world works. On the other side of the table, as an entrepreneur, all the term sheets, all the deals, all the things, when it comes to drag right, tag rights, all the things that I had no clue about before. But shortly after I joined the fund called North, and my timing was perfect because one of the first companies we met were the 2 founders of Spotify. So luckily, my colleague and I, we met down in Martin, and we did an investment in Spotify. We were the first investor in Spotify.
Wow! Okay.
And it has been an amazing investment, right? And what happened in Sweden at that time was the people, they knew Daniel and Martin, and they said, Daniel and Martin, they're nice guys, but they're not that smart. If they can do it, I can do it.
Right.
And suddenly, we got this, a lot of talented people getting together and say, why don't we start a tech company? Why don't we kind of do something? And in Sweden, within 5 years, Sweden actually changed. And the same thing happened in London. And then it happened in Berlin. And then it happened in Paris. And then it happened in Barcelona. And why I'm so thrilled about Africa, and I love Africa for many reasons, but what I'm so thrilled about Africa is that I think Africa stopped in 2005.
Okay.
It's just in the beginning.
For the inflection point.
Yeah.
And so is that why you decided to join Niklas to do this?
So I was with Norrsken for quite a long time. When we were going to raise our ninth fund in 2019, I was the old guy on the block. I said, maybe I should do something. I think I'm going to do a long lunch. So I said to my team, I'm going to do a long lunch. I'm going to help you to raise the 9th fund, and then I'm going to move to Africa. So in 2019, I moved down here, and I met a lot of entrepreneurs.
So you just moved. It wasn't, there was nothing at the moment.
There was nothing there. I had this idea that I want to learn more about Africa, right? So I met a lot of entrepreneurs. I met a lot of investors. Most of them were pre-seed and seed investors. So there was quite a good community of business angels and funds with $20, $30, $40 million.
Yeah.
But there were no fund at the time. Partech was around, but there was no fund really that could help the companies fund for the next step, right? So when you came, to Series A, you had to fly to London. And then you come to London and people in London says, who are you? And I experienced that because I was living in London at the time from Norrsken. So I had a lot of African entrepreneurs coming to me raising money, but we said, we don't know anything about Africa. We don't have any network. We don't know it. So with that background, I had lunch with Niklas one day and I said to Niklas, God, we're gonna have to raise a proper fund in Africa. And he said, yeah, let's do that. And then that's when it all started. Amazing.
And that was 2019?
This is 2020.
2020, right?
So we're middle of COVID, and then we looked at each other. But we don't know anything about Africa. We've been there, but we need to have a proper African team. A team that really understands Africa, right? We know a little bit about tech investments and a little bit about building companies, but we don't know the African culture. So we started to interview a lot of very talented people on the continent and asked if they can join Norrsken22. And at the same time, we started to talk to investors. And I must say, the team that we have, Lexi, Geta, Natalie, and everyone else, just amazing.
I think we're like 14, 15 people. We have offices in Cape Town, Johannesburg, Lagos, Nairobi. It's the best, maybe the best team I ever worked with. I think we recruited super high profiles at the Klarna days, but it's nothing compared to this. So I'm very, very proud of them.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it is. And I'm sitting there because I'm still a partner of Northzone, which is now today one of the largest VC funds in Europe. So I see the investment proposals and the material that Norrsken produces, which has been around for more than 30 years, or close to 30 years. And I look at the material that I get from the Norrsken22 team that's been around for 2 years, and it's equally good, right? It's such a it's much more professional, mature than people think that has not been in Africa.
So, I mean, our team, we have a great team here. We have investment professionals, we have our head of ESG and impact, and we have some back office staff. But I think our day-to-day is really engaging with portfolio companies mostly and helping them solve the problems that they see on a daily basis. And then also, being embedded in the local market, trying to see what problems are hot on people's minds and where technology can plug in to solve these problems. And really building relationships with even the companies that are quite early stage that we think are going to be growing into their Series A, so we can be the partner that helps support them to their next stage of growth. A lot of our team that's with Norrsken22 now actually had been investing in Africa technology companies for quite a while. We had 2 funds before that, mostly focusing on early stage investments. But where we saw a big challenge is as our companies kind of scaled up from their early stages, all of the international investors that were able to really support their growth from Series A and B and C, they were international investors. And we just didn't feel that was meeting all of the value that our companies needed. I mean, they needed investors that understood the local environment, not only for investment decision making, but to, like I said, to help them engage with kind of the regulators, the key contracts that they're trying to land, and we wanted to be that local investment partner.
But identified a clear funding gap. So when the companies go from Series A and going to raise Series B and Series C, many companies need to go international. And that's not as easy as finding local capital that understands the local markets. And we want to be that player that can really not only invest into these African native companies, but also be the one that are catalyzing and bringing even more capital coming in from the US and Europe into these companies by being the trusted partner on the ground.
So I know Hans is going to talk a little bit more about Norrsken22. So I want to go back to the foundation itself, right? You've talked about the why and talked about the kind of companies that you invest and how an offshoot of that is the one that focuses on Africa. But what more can you tell us about what the foundation is currently doing and even why you're in Lagos now? Because, I mean, you're not the one running the 22 fund, right?
Right, no, that's right. I am actively involved in the Norrsken Foundation Fund. I'm a part of the investment committee, but you're right, we're doing many other activities. Yeah. So, and important to say as well is that even though the Norrsken Foundation is a non-profit, we clearly believe in for-profit models.
Right.
So if you look at the Norrsken22 again, it is for-profit, and we believe that that's the best way of attracting even more capital coming into the continent. But we're also then building these ecosystems or lighthouses for entrepreneurship. So we have one of these Norrsken houses in Kigali in Rwanda. It's currently the home for over 1,000 entrepreneurs sitting in this campus. I think it's the biggest campus for entrepreneurship in Africa, actually. Yeah. And we want to provide exactly this space, as I was talking about in the beginning, that was so crucial for Klarna in the founding days, to have a place where you can sit, not alone, but you can actually sit next to other entrepreneurs, where you can share ideas, you can share mistakes and learnings, where you have closer access to capital, So we have incubators and accelerators sitting in this house, so the proximity becomes much closer. And also, it also works very well as being able to put a spotlight on entrepreneurship, so you can even inspire other people that have not yet discovered the entrepreneurial track or career in life. So I think it can work in many different ways. And we don't want to stop in Kigali, in Rwanda.
I was going to ask.
Here, right?
but why was Kigali the first place that you chose in Africa to build a house?
I think it was a little bit coincidences. We found this fantastic plot in downtown Kigali. It was an old Belgian school, and we saw the possibility of transforming that into this big campus. I think we also saw that Rwanda could work as a good gateway into other markets. It's a good testing ground. And I think now being here in Lagos in Nigeria, I mean, it's a huge market, right? 200 million people. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's like 60% are below 25 years old.
Yes, under 25.
Yeah, a lot of people getting connected with a smartphone. It's a huge talent base. It's a culture of where you have everything you need for a founding team. You could find the hustlers, you have the administrators, you have the developers, and everyone is needed, right? And maybe the most important, I think you already have these role models that show what is possible. I think you have 7 unicorns coming out of Nigeria that then works in a very good way that people can see what is possible. And that is so important. So I think that these 7 unicorns coming out of Nigeria is just the beginning. And then, of course, we're looking into, would it make sense to set up a next Norrsken house here in Lagos? Maybe it does, maybe not.
That would be cool.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be cool. But there's a lot of other great spaces here as well.
So what are some of the exciting companies that you've seen in the last 2 years since the fund?
Africa has a unique position in the world with its young population.
Yeah.
No other places on earth you find such a young group of people with a mobile phone in their hand, connected to the internet, connected to the world, and the world is connected to them. I mean, this cohort of about 700 million Africans, they will change their Africa. The first thing we need to do is to make sure that they can do business on the internet. And what do you need if you want to do business on the internet? You need a bank account. So fintech is one of the first things that we need to establish. And therefore, we've done a couple of investments in fintech companies. We've done Smile ID.
Very, very proud of Mark building a Smile ID. I know how important it is to have the infrastructure and making transactions secure and having less fraud in the system for the entire economy to grow. The Smile ID enables this additional anti-fraud layer in securing the transactions. I think that is hugely impactful and also a great business investment.
So if you use any sort of fintech product in Nigeria, but actually mostly across Africa and many of the big tech markets, you would have been verified by Smile ID. So what they do is they tie into government databases, but they also prove that the person standing in front of the mobile device is who they say they are. And if you think about how the growth of financial inclusion is going to come from digital and from your cell phone, Smile ID is really riding across that entire wave of growth as one of the infrastructure providers behind it.
So that's one important part of our investment strategy. The second thing is something we call market enablement. It's removing friction in trade. And we're not talking about we're going to start buying trucks and stuff like that. We're talking about digital solutions like Sabi and others, where we help businesses, local businesses, to order and to interact and to do things much more efficiently than they did before.
Set up Sabi to tackle a huge problem that wholesalers and distributors in market were facing. They were super undigitized, but needed to off-sell their goods, needed an efficient way to get their goods to the end user, needed more efficiency around data tracking, needed logistics partners, but also even more so needed export opportunities. And those companies, they saw huge potential to be able to be the technology marketplace that opens up these additional markets for these wholesalers and distributors. And over time, they've kind of followed the data and what their customers are asking for. And that's really to mostly be kind of the efficient engine to allow these domestic companies, whether they're producing goods locally, whether they're processing commodities or maybe even minerals, to be able to more efficiently export to an international market. And meanwhile, that international buyer wants to have a lot more transparency over where those goods are coming from, that they're sourced in a responsible manner, and Sabi is solving all of that for the supply chain. So we think that there is a huge opportunity across many verticals in the supply chain, and Sabi has really shown that in this vertical, they've been able to capture great margin, very sticky customer, and we are super excited about what that company is going to become.
And as I said before, we're not talking about a time horizon of 15 years. I think this can happen within 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
It goes very quickly when the momentum started to go. It moves.
And it has a ripple effect.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So we're in Lagos right now, and last year I was around for the opening of the house and the big event in Kigali, and that was amazing. I was like, well, Lagos could have been that place as well. And so I'm wondering now, what are the plans for Nigeria, right? Not just Africa. We talked a lot about the entire continent and the amazing work and the amazing people and what's coming out of the continent. But what are you hoping to achieve in Lagos, in Nigeria?
So don't tell anyone, okay?
I'll try not to.
But I think Lagos is going to be the tech hub of Africa. I think this is going to be the epicenter of tech activity in Africa. There will also be a lot of activity in Nairobi. There will be activity in Johannesburg, Cape Town, and Cairo. But I think Lagos has a specific position, you know, with the sheer size of Nigeria, and also the deep talent pool that is here, right? Because of just the sheer size of Lagos. So we are very bullish on Nigeria to invest more, and we have raised $200 million. One of our purposes is to actually make those 200 million into $1 billion. And how do we do that? Well, the thing with venture capital is that we love to syndicate. We love to bring in other people to companies that we, you know, the private equity guys, the buyout guys, they buy 100% of a company and keep everyone out. We like to invest in other people.
Yeah.
So we can be that trusted partner here in Nigeria and call our friends in London or in Silicon Valley and say, we have a very interesting fintech company here, or we have a very interesting company here doing market enablement. So come and co-invest with us. We're a trusted partner. And therefore we can actually, when we write a ticket of 10, 20 million, the ticket can be 50 million because we can multiply by being
the trusted partner.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So we are super excited about Nigeria, especially with the growth on the African continent, because it has very strong demographic tailwinds, a super young population growing very quickly, but also a population that's moving into an urban center. And we think for tech hubs to really be successful, you need to have these densely populated areas where not only you can kind of build on tech success stories, build those talent hubs, build angel investors and expertise within tech, but you can also have network effects that make a lot of these technology-driven platforms almost viral. And that's really what we're looking for within Nigeria. What else excites us about the market is we do think that there is a whole positive shift in terms of economic policy that's coming with the new administration, as well as a lot of supportive, hopefully, policies around technology much more broadly. So we do see the country overall realizing a lot of GDP growth, but technology itself will be an outsized performer in that, because the great thing about Nigeria is there are a lot of problems and not a lot of infrastructure yet built. So you can almost have that latecomer advantage where technology can come in, implement their solutions for a consumer and businesses that are really hungry to adopt systems that can solve their problems, from supply chain to connectivity to retail, logistics, and that's really where we're seeing the big opportunity.
You've talked about the verticals that you're looking into, the talent, the market enablement, the fintechs. But what kind of founders? And I'm asking because a good percentage of people who watch this video are founders who want to apply and say, hey, how can I get funded by Norrsken22? So when you watch this video, how do you want them to sort of present themselves or think, oh, I'm the kind of founder and I didn't know I was that kind of founder?
Yeah. Everyone talks about the team,
Yeah.
right? And the team is number one, number two, number three, right? When we meet entrepreneurs, we want to understand and get to know the entrepreneur almost on a level with what they eat for breakfast, right? To understand what is driving them, how are they able to present their vision of what they want to do? How are they able to sell it to me? Because if they can sell it to me, they probably can sell it to the guys they're going to hire and other people, right? So we focus a lot on the team and just see, is this a team that really wants to do this? So that's and then of course we look at the product, and then we look at the size of the market, because we want to address markets that are what we call blue sky opportunity. But one thing that a lot of people miss is that we also look a lot about the business model. How do you actually selling this in the most efficient way? And that varies obviously from product to product or service to service. But often, the business model is as disruptive as the product in many cases.
I mean, even though we see the opportunity as being massive and a lot of the companies are growing super quickly, there's a ton of challenges in investing in this market. We have to deal with a fluctuating currency, which we've seen depreciate a lot over the past year. We have to deal with volatile regulatory frameworks. A lot of times regulators aren't engaging with the tech ecosystem, so they don't really understand how their policies are going to impact the universe at large. And we don't know what's coming. So those are the biggest challenges. I would also say, we're a lot of times investing in teams that have a lot of great skills in running businesses, but this might be their first time as an entrepreneur. And as an entrepreneur, you have to be a jack of all trades. You have to be a great manager. You have to be a strategist. You have to be a firefighter. And working with these teams to build all of that, plus kind of the framework behind them in terms of governance, so they can really scale up their internal teams and become a large company, not just a couple-man show, is another huge challenge that we work super closely with teams on. So, we do think a lot about these challenges before we even invest. So we do a lot of work on due diligence and how we can combat a lot of these challenges. I mean, with regulation, we develop really close relationships with regulators in our own markets, which also makes us hopefully a great value-add investor for these companies. So we can get kind of the inside scoop on how they're thinking and help educate them on how that'll impact our portfolio companies. On currency, we really do kind of forecast the worst sort of situation and are ultra conservative on how we model out future forecasts for companies. I mean, the truth is most of the companies we're investing in are outgrowing even currency devaluations, but it's a huge risk. Another thing that I would say is hugely important that is attached to these risks are international investors from the US, from the Europe. They kind of see these risk factors as being maybe too big to handle when they are looking at investment opportunities. So we also work with a lot of those international investors as being kind of like the boots on the ground, the trusted source that understands the risks that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, and to get those international co-investors comfortable to invest alongside of us and also help take our companies not just from an African perspective to a global perspective.
The most important thing for us are the founders, the entrepreneurs. So talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, of course. I mean, with the Norrsken22, we're here to invest. It's quite kind of new fund, so a lot of money to deploy. The entrepreneurship can be the force, not only can, but should be the force for good in the world, so that we all can live within the planetary boundaries. And we are a non-profit. I donated so far about half of my wealth, $125 million. We're going to try to do everything we can to enable this.
Yeah, so I think it's important that everybody recognizes Norrsken22 as kind of the preferred investor on the continent to help scale up African technology companies. But more than that, I think we do a lot on the ground in the ecosystem more broadly. We've brought a group of women through a venture capital training program to try to boost diversity within the industry. And we've done a lot of work on the ESG side, also building in certain policies and targets, not only within our own companies, but helping the whole industry in general kind of build ESG targets around venture capital. So that's something we're super proud of. But mostly, I hope that people recognize that we are very strong commercial investors and have a strong portfolio of companies that will become the winners across the African ecosystem and expand to the rest of the world. So we are really doubling down on our momentum now, have a lot of companies coming through the pipeline that are closing, and we're super excited what the next couple of years has in store for us.
Hi everyone, I am the co-founding partner Hans Otterling of Norrsken22. I'm sitting here in Lagos together with Peace, and I must say I'm so happy to be here, and we, Norrsken22, would like to support the ecosystem, the tech ecosystem here in Lagos and in Nigeria. And the way we do it is that we have a $200 million fund to help support growth in tech companies. And if you have a vision of building something sizable, blue sky opportunity within the tech sector, primarily in fintech or what we call market enablement, removing friction in distribution and logistics, we would love to talk to you. But there can also be other ideas in medtech or health tech or whatever. But we love to talk to tech entrepreneurs, passionate tech entrepreneurs. Thank you.
That was amazing. I think my favorite part of this episode is just learning how passionate everyone at Norrsken is about Africa, from Lexi to Niklas to Hans, understanding why they're building, who they're looking for, and the hopes that they have for the continent. It makes me very proud to be African right now and to just be telling stories of African builders. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're a founder, you should apply. You know, there's a lot of money, $205 million, a lot of money, and can expand that to over $1 billion. And that was fascinating. I also just really enjoyed learning about Niklas, his background, hitting his first $10 million, but realizing that's not quite it in life. Let me hit my own first before I get there. But it was fantastic. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'll see you in the next one. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Peace.